Orphan Train Rider, One Boy's True Story. Chapter 6, Finding Homes for Orphans, Part 1. Few of the children who climbed aboard orphan trains understood what was happening to them. Once they realized why they were taking the trip, their feelings differed. If they had been passed around from relative to relative, lived on the streets, been abused by their parents, or been in an orphanage, they were likely to be pleased at the thought of finding a new family. Others, like Lee, did not want a new family and were angry to find themselves being taken to new homes. In the early days of the trains, the Children's Aid Society sometimes took children off the streets or out of prison, but most of them came from orphanages. A few were signed over to the society by parents who wanted their children to have a chance for a better life than they could give them. Some children found their way to the society by themselves and asked to go on the trains. Once a company of children was formed, they were bathed and given 2 sets of new clothes, including a hat, a coat, and shoes. Sometimes they were given a Bible. Many were taught manners, such as to eat neatly and say thank you, so they would make a good impression on prospective parents. A number was pinned to their clothing to help the adults keep track of them during the trip. Agents who worked for the Children's Aid Society looked for towns along the railroad tracks that were interested in having an orphan train stop there. Then they put up signs saying a train was coming and set up local screening committees, the people who would approve the families who wanted to choose a child. Charles Loring Brace did not want families to adopt the children until it was clear that a child and a family were a good match for each other. That way the arrangement was not bound by law, and either the child or the parents could end it if it was not a success. If that happened, the society would try to find the child another home. In fact, most of the early orphan train riders were never legally adopted, even if the child and family grew to love each other. Adoption was not common in the United States until the 1900s. Still, many of the children used their new family's name. Sometimes children lived with several families before finding the one they could stay with. Claretta Carmen Miller of Colorado and her 2 sisters were neglected by their parents, so they were taken away from their home and put on an orphan train. Claretta was chosen by a family with 9 children. They did not want another child, they wanted a servant. A society agent tried to visit each child every year, but as the program grew bigger, that became difficult. Fortunately, an agent visited Claretta after only 2 weeks and immediately took her away from the family. She endured bad treatment in 2 more homes before she arrived at the Carmen farm late one Friday rainy night. Mrs. Carmen was a gentle, kind woman. It took her a year to nurse the sickly little girl back to health. With the Carmens, Claretta found loving parents and a real home at last. If the birth parents were still alive, the society would try to get their written permission before sending a child west. But some parents did not understand what they were signing. When they tried to get their children back, the parents learned that they were gone and could not be traced. At first, the Children's Aid Society had only refused to give information to parents who had abused their children. Then the society stopped letting any parents know where their children were. Brace believed it was best for children to break with the past and start a new life. So once a child left on a train, neither parent nor child knew how to find each other. Children were not allowed to bring any keepsakes with them, although some managed to smuggle a beloved photograph or locket on the journey west. Some older children did know how to reach their parents and stayed in touch with them. Others ran away and returned to their parents. For most orphan train riders, who either did not remember their families or did not know how to find them. Being denied information about themselves and their birth families often led to anger and frustration later in life. One writer was arrested as an adult for trying to steal his records. Some agencies would give basic facts like date and place of birth or copies of birth certificates, but few would reveal reasons why the parents had given up their children. Arthur Field Smith in New Jersey rode an orphan train to Iowa in 1922. Felt strongly that orphans should have access to any information that exists about them. For medical and every other reason, orphans and their families have just as much right to know about themselves as those who are not orphans. There is stigma enough attached to being an orphan, he says. Most placements were successful and the program grew. During the first 20 years, an average of 3,000 children rode the orphan trains each year. Brace continued to raise the needed money through his speeches and his writing. Railroads gave discount fares to the children, and wealthy people sometimes paid for whole train loads of children. Unfortunately, many children who needed homes were not allowed to go on the trains. It was always difficult to find homes for older children, and while some teenagers as old as 17 were successfully placed, 14 was usually the oldest a rider could be. It was always easiest to find homes for babies. And that concludes part 1 of chapter 6 of Orphan Train Rider.